Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for February the 28th. Today we are reading together the 26th Psalm. Psalm 26 is titled Prayer for Vindication. This is a Psalm of David. I would probably classify this Psalm as a confidence Psalm because David seems to be dealing with some sort of accusation against him, someone pressing him to admit some sort of sin or poor behavior. And David here is going to God with confidence, knowing and feeling confidence that God will vindicate him, that he will judge David rightly and acknowledge the integrity with which he has lived his life. Not to say David is perfect. Of course, we have scripture that shows us that he was not perfect, but again, the basic um, the basic course of his life was one of integrity in which he sought to live pleasing before God. So let's read about that here in the Psalm, Psalm number 26, beginning in verse number 1. Psalm 26, verse number 1: Vindicate me, Yahweh, because I have lived with integrity and have trusted in Yahweh without wavering. Test me, Yahweh, and try me. Examine my heart and mind, for your faithful love guides me, and I live by your truth. I do not sit with the worthless or associate with hypocrites. I hate a crowd of evildoers, and I do not sit with the wicked. I wash my hands in innocence and go around your altar, Yahweh, raising my voice in thanksgiving and telling about your wondrous works. Yahweh, I love the house where you dwell, the place where your glory resides. Do not destroy me along with sinners, or my life along with men of bloodshed, in whose hands are evil schemes, and whose right hands are filled with bribes. But I live with integrity. Redeem me and be gracious to me. My foot stands on level ground. I will bless Yahweh in the assemblies. And that is Psalm number 26. You might have noticed here a good inclusio, meaning a good set of bookends pertaining to the same idea here. The idea is integrity. Notice the second line of verse number 1. The request in verse number 1 and line 1 is vindicate me, Yahweh. Then the second line says, because I have lived with integrity. Go to verse number 11 now, where again, that idea is brought forth, but I live with integrity. The whole idea of this psalm is a proving of the integrity with which David has lived his life. Again, it seems that there is some sort of accusation that is against David here, and David is writing this psalm in order to show his integrity and to allow Yahweh to vindicate him. Um, vindicate me, Yahweh, because I've lived with integrity. I have trusted in Yahweh without wavering. David is saying here, this has been my constant way of life, trusting in Yahweh consistently. Yes, there were times that we can even see in David's life where he made real mistakes, where he acted foolishly and did not show the type of integrity that he's speaking of here. But again, the basic course of his life, the way his life could be defined as a whole, is one of integrity. I have trusted in Yahweh without wavering. So that's his claim. I have done this. So he then states in verse number 2, test me, Yahweh, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind. He's basically saying, Yahweh, I am, excuse me, I am an open book. I am an open book. You can investigate me and you can show my innocence by examining me, by testing me. You will see exactly who I am. And not only will you see that, but all those, especially those who might be accusing David in some way, they will see my innocence. Verse number 3. Now, some might say that sounds, excuse me, some might say of David that this sounds kind of presumptuous of him, almost arrogant and prideful. But notice verse number 3: For your faithful love guides me, and I live by your truth. Yahweh was the source of his integrity. This is not self righteousness at all on David's part, but this is him simply acknowledging that I have lived by the ways of Yahweh. I have lived according to his standards. Therefore, he is judging me not based upon what I think he should judge me by, but he can judge me based upon his own standards. Now, I know his standards. Remember, think about all the different times that we've seen so far, specifically in the last psalm that we read on Monday, Psalm 25. Think about the number of times within that psalm that David requested that Yahweh teach him his ways. Think about all the times that that's mentioned in Psalm 25 and in the previous Psalms we've seen, as well in the Psalms that we will see moving forward through the Psalter. David constantly asking Yahweh to teach him or to teach me your ways. Well, because David knows his ways, and because David allows for Yahweh's ways to guide him, and because David is living by these ways, he again has confidence that as Yahweh judges him and considers who he is, that he will be judged well, that this open book of his life, he will be vindicated. So what does it look like though? What is the proof of verse number 3, that your faithful love guides me and I live by your truth? Well, it looks like from a negative perspective, meaning things that David does not do, verses 4 and 5. I do not sit with the worthless or associate with hypocrites. I hate a crowd of evildoers, and I do not sit with the wicked. That sounds a whole lot like Psalm 1 and verse number 1, doesn't it? All the way back in Psalm number 1 and verse number 1, how happy is the one who does not walk in the advice of the wicked, or stand in the pathway with sinners, or sit in the company of mockers. That's what David is possibly alluding to here, but this is just him echoing the same sort of idea, that I hate that which is wicked and evil, and I stay very far away from it. Now you might contrast that. We'll get ahead a little bit to verse number 8. So we'll talk about that once we get to verse number 8, how that idea contrasts with what we see in verse number 8, the other side of the coin. But again, David makes the claim that I live by faithful love. I live by your faithful love. It guides me, and your truths, they teach me, and I live by them. Part of that looks like me not doing these things. Again, not sitting with worthless people or associating with hypocrites or hating the crowd of evildoers, and I do not sit with the wicked. On the other side, though, I do wash my hands in innocence, and I go around your altar, Yahweh, raising my voice in thanksgiving and telling about your good work. So I do not do these things, but this is what I do instead. I wash my hands in innocence. Exodus 30 in verses 17 through 21 talk about the priests washing their hands in the bronze basin before entering the tabernacle so that they might be pure. That's the idea I think that David has here, that I come before you with clean hands of innocence. And because I am clean, I'm able to, I don't think literally, but figuratively approach your altar, Yahweh, and I'm able to lift up my voice in thanksgiving. I'm able to tell of your wondrous works. Again, notice this, I'm able to do this without wavering, verse number 2 or verse number 1. I am consistent in this. I'm consistent in this. I do not sit with worthless people. I do not associate with hypocrites. I hate the crowd of evildoers. I do not sit with the wicked, but instead I'm able to come before you with innocent washed hands, raising my voice in thanksgiving, and telling about your wondrous deeds. Yahweh, verse number 8, I love the house where you dwell, the place where your glory resides. Now let's compare that again with verse number 5. Verse number 5, I hate a crowd of evildoers, and I do not sit with the wicked. Verse number 8, Yahweh, I love the house where you dwell, the place where your glory resides. There's the contrast. I hate that which is evil. I love that which is about you. I love being in your presence. I love living in such a way so that I can be in your presence. So therefore, do not destroy me along with the sinners, or my life along with men of bloodshed, whose hands are evil schemes and whose right hands are filled with bribes. I don't belong with them. That is not who I associate with. That is not the type of person that I've strived in my life to be. I just do not belong with them. But I do live with integrity. Verse number 11, again, that's the closing of the inclusio, this whole section here. Redeem me and be gracious to me. My foot stands on level ground, not uneven ground of the wicked, but I'm stable. I have a good foundation. I stand on level ground, and I will bless Yahweh in the assemblies. I'll bless Yahweh in the assemblies. We've seen that a couple of times here. This idea of assemblies, groups of people. Again, I do not sit with the worthless. I do not associate with hypocrites. I hate a crowd of evildoers, and I do not sit with the wicked. So that crowd I do not strive to I do not want to be with. Again, verses 9 and 10, the sinners, the men who are of bloodshed, I don't belong with them. But who I do belong with, because again, the character that I have shown consistently throughout my life, is I belong with the assemblies of Yahweh. Those are the people that I identify with. So, Yahweh, as you look at my life, as you look at, the crowd I strive to belong to, as you look at the evidence, as you look at the evidence of my life, David feels confident that he can request of God that he vindicate him. That there is, again, assuming that there is some sort of accusation against him, David turns to Yahweh in confidence. He's thinking about the accuser, thinking about the accusation, saying, you know what? You're wrong. I'm going to turn to the one who knows all truth. That is Yahweh. So you, Yahweh, I am an open book. Test me, examine me, and I have great confidence that in the end, you will vindicate me, because you will see by the pattern of my life, the consistency of who I am. I'm not perfect, no, but I've allowed for your faithful love to guide me. I've sought to live by your truths. You have seen my integrity. So, Yahweh, I come before you and I ask that you vindicate me. And I feel very confident that you'll be able to do this very thing. That seems to be the gist here of Psalm 26. Would we be willing to do the same thing? Would we be willing to do the same thing if someone were to accuse us of not being godly in our character or in the pattern of our lives? Would we be able to turn to Yahweh and ask him to vindicate me? Would we be willing to do that? Well, what's going to be able to determine our confidence in doing that is, again, what crowd do we belong to? Do we belong to the evil crowd, or do we belong to the crowd that is the assembly of God? Do we live by integrity, or do we not live by integrity? If we can answer those questions, then we can have confidence, if we answer them rightly and well, that God would vindicate us in the same way that David seeks to be vindicated here in Psalm number 26. I appreciate so much you tuning in for this reading on this Wednesday. If you have any questions or comments about Psalm 26, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me. We'll be at it tonight, gathering at 7 p.m. for our Bible studies on this Wednesday evening. And then we'll be back reading again on Friday morning from Psalm 27, which is titled My Stronghold, another Psalm of David. Hope to see you then. Take care and God bless.